All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to be we're diving into Coalitionsvertrag 2025.pdf. Specifically, we're looking at, Germany's economic and technological future. And so a main goal here is to kind of extract the most critical plans for growth, innovation, all that good stuff. And as always, our main source here is going to be the coalition agreement. This is where we're going to be, pulling most of our information from.
Sounds like we have a lot to unpack here. There's a ton of initiatives detailed in this agreement, and it seems like they're really focused on taking Germany to the next level in terms of their economy and their overall technological landscape.
Yeah, and one thing that really stuck out to me right off the bat was their emphasis on boosting entrepreneurship and innovation. And one way they want to do this is through a Gründerzone, a founder protection zone. And the idea there is to kind of ease the burden on new businesses. They also talk about simplifying notarization, making it more digital, making data exchange automatic between offices. How do you think these measures, how will they impact new ventures trying to get off the ground?
Well, I think the core idea here is to really reduce those initial hurdles,
Yeah.
make it easier, faster for startups to actually establish themselves. One thing that stood out to me was the goal of enabling business Gründung within 24 hours. That's incredibly ambitious, but it shows you how serious they are about creating a truly efficient startup environment. And they're going to be using a new digital platform, a one-stop shop, to try to make that happen.
It's interesting because on top of that, they're also looking to strengthen employee capital participation. So they want to adjust tax and social security laws to kind of make it more appealing for employees to actually have stakes in the companies they work for. Why do you think that's such a priority for them?
Well, I think it's all about, fostering a stronger sense of ownership. When employees have a stake in the company, they're more likely to be invested in its success, right?
Yeah.
It can lead to higher engagement, more innovation, and ultimately, contribute directly to growth. It's a win-win situation.
Now, Germany is really striving to become like an AI nation, and they're putting a lot of money, investing it into cloud and AI infrastructure. But it's not just about the basics, right? They're also targeting some very specific areas for advancement. What are some of those beyond just the infrastructure itself?
Absolutely, yeah. They're putting a strong emphasis on things like lightweight technology, additive manufacturing, 3D printing. These are all areas where there's a huge potential for innovation. And they're looking to really leverage those technologies to bolster their industrial base and stay ahead of the curve globally.
And to make all this happen, they're planning on introducing the Deutschlandfonds, which is a pretty big deal. I mean, we're talking at least 10 billion euros, combining private and state investment. So what is it about this fund? What are they hoping to achieve with it?
Well, it's a significant commitment for sure. It demonstrates their willingness to put serious financial muscle behind these initiatives. This fund is essentially going to provide the backing for, really ambitious projects, especially those that might struggle to find funding elsewhere. It's about accelerating those breakthroughs in key areas, driving economic development in a focused and strategic manner.
They're also giving biotechnology a lot of attention, easing regulations, making it easier for startups to get venture capital. So what is it about biotechnology that makes it such a priority? Why focus on that specifically?
Biotechnology is a field with immense potential. I think everyone recognizes that. We're talking about advancements that could revolutionize healthcare, agriculture, even address some of the big challenges related to sustainability and climate change. By easing those barriers, they're hoping to unlock that potential, attract the best minds, and really establish Germany as a global leader in this space.
And speaking of, big challenges, the agreement does talk about those structural issues facing the steel and automotive sectors. And at the same time, they're looking to expand the defense industry. So what's the plan there? How do you see these two things working together?
It's a complex balancing act, right?
Yeah.
They're dealing with these established industries that need to adapt, to evolve, in the face of new technologies and global economic shifts. But at the same time, they're looking to bolster their defense capabilities. Repurposing existing industrial facilities for defense production is something that's being explored as a way to maximize resources and create some synergy between those sectors.
Now, Germany is also committed to continuing its involvement in space exploration. They're talking about, a successor to the ISS, supporting the carrier rocket sector, even a North Sea launch platform. It's a significant investment. So what's the thinking behind, maintaining this focus on space?
Well, space exploration is a driver of innovation. It pushes the boundaries of technology, science. It's a long-term investment in those areas. And they're making sure to emphasize the involvement of SMEs and startups. So those benefits are spread widely, fostering new technologies, creating high-skilled jobs, all of that.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about digital transformation. Germany is really pushing for a fully digitalized administration. They want to make increasingly applicant less digital only, but at the same time, they're going to provide support for people who can't or just choose not to use digital channels. So, what are the key elements of this digitalization effort?
One of the big ones, and we've touched on this already, is that goal of enabling business Gründen within 24 hours. That really speaks to the level of ambition here. They're going to be doing a deep dive, reviewing tasks, institutions, even looking at those over 950 federal agencies. Can any of them be merged? Can we reduce redundancies? It's about streamlining and increasing efficiency across the board.
They're also planning to establish a Deutschland stack, which is essentially a platform for digital services. It needs to be interoperable, compatible with European standards. What's the big idea behind this Deutschland stack?
The Deutschland stack is all about creating a robust, independent digital infrastructure. It's about data sovereignty, ensuring that data is controlled within Germany. But at the same time, it needs to work seamlessly with their European partners. So it's a balancing act. But the goal is to create this secure and interconnected foundation for all those essential digital services.
They're also talking about a digital identity, the UEDI, and how it's going to be aligned with the European Social Security card. How does this fit into the whole digital transformation picture?
Well, imagine a world where you can access a whole range of services, both public and private, with just one secure digital ID. That's the goal here. It would streamline so many processes, making things more convenient for citizens, for businesses. And because it's aligned with that European Social Security card, it also opens up possibilities for cross-border transactions, interacting with other EU members in a much more seamless way.
All right, so there's also this plan to modernize the German federal archives through, digitization, site development. And then there's this strategy called Kultur in KI, exploring the intersection of AI and cultural creation. These seem like, kind of separate things. How do they all tie into this broader digital agenda?
They all speak to a commitment to embracing digital technology across different aspects of society. With the archives, it's about preserving history, making it accessible in the digital age. And with the Kultur and KI strategy, it's about recognizing that AI is already impacting the creative fields, and they want to understand that impact, maybe even guide it in a positive direction. It's forward-thinking stuff.
Now, they're also showing support for the game industry, seeing it as part of the cultural and creative sector. So there's talk about tax incentives, reliable funding programs, even advocating for Kulturschutzgebiete, these cultural protection areas for clubs. What's your take on this? What does it say about their view of these sectors?
I think it reflects a broader understanding of what constitutes culture and its value. They're acknowledging the economic contributions of these sectors, but also their cultural significance. The game industry is huge. It employs a lot of people. It's a global force, and they're smart to recognize that. And protecting those unique cultural spaces, like clubs, ensures that those scenes can continue to thrive. It's about preserving that vibrancy.
And of course, education is a big part of this. They're talking about developing those digital learning platforms, resources for education, a Bildungsverlaufs register, so an educational progress register, and even a compatible student ID. How is all this supposed to kind of bring education into the 21st century?
It's about providing the tools and resources to make learning more effective and engaging, for this digital generation. Tracking student progress more efficiently, streamlining administrative processes, it all plays a role. And let's not forget about the Digital Pact. That's a key initiative for improving digital infrastructure in schools, making sure they have reliable internet access, the right equipment, all of that.
And they're also looking to fully digitalize the administration of social benefits. They want to use available data to proactively inform citizens of potential claims and simplify the application process. What's the benefit of this, both for the citizens and for the administration itself?
Well, it's about making these crucial services more accessible, more user-friendly. By using data intelligently, they can potentially identify people who might be eligible for benefits even before they apply, and guide them through the process. It could significantly reduce bureaucratic hurdles, which benefits everyone. And on the administrative side, it allows for more efficient processing, better tracking, potentially even combating fraud.
Now, in the justice system, they want to translate those procedural codes into the digital age. So no more paper files. They want digital platforms. They want to be able to accommodate digital evidence. How will how will this change things in the legal process?
Well, speed and efficiency are the key words here. Imagine a legal system where information is readily available, where evidence can be shared instantly, and where workflows are streamlined. That's the vision. Digital platforms have the potential to significantly shorten those procedure times, which is a huge benefit for everyone involved.
They're also going to reform data protection supervision, centralizing it at the Federal Data Protection Commissioner. And at the same time, they want to make consent solutions for state services less bureaucratic. What's the thinking behind this approach to data handling?
Well, with data protection becoming increasingly important, they're trying to strike that balance between security and user convenience. Centralizing supervision ensures consistency in how data is handled, a single authority responsible for enforcing those regulations. And by simplifying those consent solutions, they're making it easier for people to actually access and use those digital services provided by the state without getting bogged down in complicated procedures. And listen, I forget, all of this is happening alongside a major push to expand fiber optic and mobile networks. They're even looking at satellite technology to fill those gaps in mobile coverage. It's about building that foundation for a truly digital society.
All right, so now let's talk about those plans for streamlining regulations and reducing bureaucracy. We talked about the Grundersitzung aimed at helping those new businesses. What other areas are they targeting for bureaucratic reduction?
They're looking at the postal sector. They want to reduce the burden there. And they're also going to consolidate that federal government funding policy. Stricter monitoring, alignment with performance indicators. It's all about making sure those resources are used efficiently and effectively. And another big one is reducing the bureaucratic hurdles for qualified immigration. And with those demographic challenges Germany is facing, attracting skilled workers is crucial. So digitalization, centralizing processes, recognizing professional qualifications faster, those are all going to be important.
They're also planning a major overhaul of the budget. They want to consolidate those federal budget funding schemes and reform the federal budget code. What are they hoping to achieve with all of that?
It's about transparency, making the budget process more efficient, and ultimately ensuring that money's being spent wisely, on the things that matter most. Reducing those excessive regulations, giving more autonomy to state and local governments, it's all part of a push for greater efficiency and accountability.
And they're not afraid to shake things up a bit. They're talking about reducing the number of federal authorities, maybe even merging some of them, eliminating redundancies. What do you think? Will this actually lead to a more efficient government?
Well, that's the goal, right? Streamlining those operations, eliminating overlaps, it could definitely make the government more agile and responsive. It's about breaking down silos and making sure everyone is working together effectively.
Now, they're also talking about strengthening experimentation clauses in laws, so allowing for more flexibility in implementation and testing. How do you think this approach could benefit businesses and citizens?
Well, it allows for a more iterative approach, testing new regulations in real-world settings before they're fully implemented. That way, you can identify any unintended consequences,
Yeah.
any unnecessary burdens, and adjust accordingly. It's about making sure those laws are actually practical and effective.
Another interesting development is the plan for the federal government to take on more responsibility in the realm of digitalization, particularly those tasks that can be standardized and automated. It seems like a pretty big shift towards a more centralized approach.
Yeah, it's a significant change. And they're even considering a constitutional amendment to make it happen. They're recognizing that digital services are essential, and they want to ensure they're delivered efficiently and consistently across the country.
And they're also looking to cut back on some of the regulations for businesses, specifically those related to environmental protection. They want to get rid of the requirement for companies, especially SMEs, to appoint environmental protection officers and reduce that associated paperwork burden. That's got to be a relief for a lot of businesses.
Absolutely. For smaller businesses in particular, these requirements can be quite burdensome. And by streamlining the regulations, focusing on the essentials, they're hoping to free up resources for those businesses to focus on what they do best, growing and innovating.
And they're also taking aim at the National Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, the LKSG. They want to replace it with a new law that's less bureaucratic, but still addresses those issues of corporate responsibility in line with EU directives.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance, right? Holding companies accountable for their supply chains, making sure they're operating ethically and sustainably, but without creating an overly burdensome regulatory environment. It's a challenge, but I think it's a necessary one.
They're also setting some pretty ambitious goals for reducing the overall bureaucratic burden, eliminating national overfulfillment of EU requirements, abolishing at least 20% of federal administrative regulations. It's a pretty big undertaking. What kind of impact could this have on the economy as a whole?
Well, the goal is to unleash the potential of German businesses, to make them more competitive, on a global scale. Reducing those unnecessary costs, streamlining those processes, it could lead to significant economic growth. It's about creating a more dynamic and efficient business environment.
And they're looking at very specific measures to achieve this. Raising the value limit for direct awards in public procurement, simplifying planning and approval procedures, all of these things are designed to make it easier for businesses to operate and grow.
Absolutely. It's about removing those roadblocks, making the system more responsive to the needs of businesses. Raising that threshold for direct awards, for example, makes it easier for smaller businesses and startups to access those government contracts, without having to go through lengthy and expensive bidding processes. And streamlining those planning and approval procedures, well, that's essential for any kind of infrastructure or development project, to get things moving faster.
They're also looking at ways to streamline the legal process, anchoring the precedents of public interests in planning law, reforming the right of associations to bring legal action, and simplifying those environmental impact assessments. It's all about finding that balance between protecting the environment and allowing for development. So, as we wrap up here, what are your main takeaways from this ambitious plan? What's the overall message you're getting?
Well, it's clear that Germany is serious about taking its economy and its technological capabilities to the next level. They're making substantial investments in key areas like artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and digital infrastructure. But at the same time, they're equally committed to tackling that bureaucracy, streamlining those regulations, making it easier for businesses to thrive, and for citizens to interact with the state. It's a multi-pronged approach. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
And I think what's really fascinating is how interconnected all of these initiatives are. Success in one area can really have a ripple effect, accelerating progress in other areas. Like, just imagine how much easier it would be to attract skilled international workers if we had that digital one-stop shop up and running. It would be a game changer.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point to end on because it highlights the potential for these initiatives to create a positive feedback loop, driving progress across the board. But it's also important to remember that such a large-scale transformation won't be without its challenges. Ensuring data security, seamless system interoperability, even managing the inevitable resistance to change within those established institutions, those are all things that need to be carefully considered and addressed.
Well, I guess that's what we'll be watching for in the years to come. It's definitely an exciting time to be following developments in Germany. Thanks for joining me on the deep dive today. We'll be back soon to tackle another complex topic.
Looking forward to it. Always a pleasure to be here.